So thank you all for joining us for Can OER and Inclusive or Equitable Access Programs Coexist? My name is Amanda Caldwell, and I am the Outreach and Engagement Librarian at Winthrop University in South Carolina, and I'm a member of the OEN Event Planning Committee. We are excited to dive into this topic with you today, and to begin, we just want to hear from you first. Bethany is going to drop a Menti poll in the chat with the prompt, how does/would your institution being in an inclusive or equitable access program make you feel? Are you worried for your OER promotion? Are you not worried at all? Are you frustrated? Let us know through this link. And I'll go ahead and pull it up as well. And while we wait for some more answers to trickle in, we do have a few ground rules that'll be outlined on the next slide that we can go over just to ensure that there is a welcoming space for discussion. And we'd also like to note that at the beginning of today's session, it will be recorded, and then we'll end the recording before our group discussion. And the automatic captioning has been enabled, so while you can access using the Show Caption button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so we've got a lot of answers here, so we can see what everyone said. Frustrated seems to be the biggest one. Conflicted, anxious, concerned, exhausted, unsurprised is interesting. Cautious, discouraged, collaborative. Collaborative is also interesting. So yeah, it seems like a lot of us are on the same page here. So that is interesting to see as we head into today's session, just kind of seeing that everyone kind of feels the same. So thank you all for sharing your input. I am going to go back to the slideshow if we want to just look over the ground rules really quickly. So we just ask that you be here now, avoid multitasking, and take advantage of this time to connect with your colleagues. Share airtime, allow everyone the opportunity to speak. Foster mutual respect, use inclusive language, be mindful of power dynamics and how they might impact the conversation. And all ideas and questions are welcome. This is a space to learn and grow, which is a vulnerable process. Assume others' positive intent and approach conversations with curiosity and openness. So if we want to go to the next one, this is our agenda for today. So right now we're in the welcome and introduction, and then we're going to go to the contributor panel. We have Cheryl Casey from the University of Arizona, Kevin Cochran from University of Central Florida, and Anne Marie Gruber from University of Northern Iowa. And then after that, we will do breakout rooms. So after today's contributors share their experience, we will divide everyone into small groups by bookstore type to continue the discussion. And there will also be a quiet space if you would not like to be placed in a small group. So there will be an opportunity to continue the discussion after the main panel. And then after the breakout rooms, we will come back for a quick community debrief and then end with some closing remarks. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our contributors. First up, we have Cheryl Casey.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's see, next slide, please. So if anyone's unfamiliar with the terms IA, Inclusive Access, or EA, Equitable Access, and these also go by lots of different names, I want to briefly explain how these programs operate, at least at the University of Arizona. Both are automatic billing programs that students can opt out of. Our EA style program, Pay One Price, applies to all main campus undergraduate courses. Graduate and Arizona online courses use inclusive access. And when students opt out of Pay One Price, it's for the full term and all courses. When students opt out of IA, it's on a per course basis. Faculty participation in Pay One Price is automatic, but optional for IA, and our campus store negotiates as hard as it can on pricing for both programs. I recognize that we're really fortunate to have a campus-owned store. For more than 13 years now, the library and store have collaborated on course material affordability efforts. And I think our partnership shows how IAEA programs and OER/library ebook affordability programs can successfully coexist. Together, we increase day one access, save students money, and enhance student success. How do we do it? The campus store shares textbook adoption data with the library on a daily basis, and we buy an unlimited user ebook license for every required and recommended textbook we can, up to $1,000 per title. Because publishers find it more profitable to sell directly to students, we can usually get less than 20% of the titles, but that's still hundreds of titles each semester. OER use is growing in U of A courses, but it's still a fraction of the library ebooks used. A library colleague and I started a course materials roadshow on campus this semester, promoting the library's free-to-use options and the support we offer to faculty. We present a course material affordability toolbox, starting with OER, unlimited user ebooks, journal articles and book chapters, streaming video, primary sources from special collections, and instructor-authored materials, which we encourage them to openly license. We emphasize to faculty that when they adopt free-to-use materials, that keeps the overall cost of pay one price low for students. Next slide, please. As of fall 2025, nearly 30% of pay one price titles are library ebooks and OER. VitalSource, our store's IAEA platform, says we're the largest user of library content. The campus store calculates OER and ebook savings into the cost of pay one price for students. When stores and libraries collaborate, partnerships can be and should be mutually beneficial for everyone. The store doesn't have to buy the titles provided by the library. Through a VitalSource library module, students get library and store content delivered in one central place, which they love. Library ebooks and OER remain accessible there, even if students opt out of IA or pay one price. Opt-out rates are quite low. This fall, the pay one price opt-out rate fell to 12%, even though the cost of pay one price rose from $250 to $262 per semester to cover inflation and increased faculty adoptions. Opt-out rates for IA are even lower, less than 10%. The library benefits because the store and VitalSource provide us with valuable data. In addition to the textbook adoption lists, we get the course enrollment numbers and the book's digital list prices that we need to estimate student savings. Before this, we'd have to look up course enrollments and Amazon prices individually, which was super time consuming for nearly 1,200 sections of courses. Store and library personnel meet weekly. We join forces to do campus outreach, like cross-promotion on our websites, collaborating on campus presentations and emails. We work together to troubleshoot for students and faculty, and we fight against outsourcing to a for-profit corporation. The store director and I did a joint presentation to Faculty Senate, for example. I love what Dave Ernst says, and that's we can accomplish so much more together than we can separately. And this has really been true for us, leveraging different expertise, information sources, campus contacts, and communication channels. And in the chat, I'll share some of the resources we've developed. Library web content is openly licensed, so feel free to adapt anything that seems useful. And now I'll pass things over to Kevin.
Oh, thanks, Cheryl. You can go on to the next slide. I want to appreciate what Cheryl said and that she went first as a campus-owned bookstore. I think it's critical to make the distinction between inclusive access programs, between campus-owned and outsourced. And Cheryl, if I misspeak, please come off mute and correct me. But one of the key pieces I pulled out from what Cheryl just said is that the institution negotiates with the publishers for the best price for the students. Unlike commercial bookstores where the bookstore is doing the negotiations with the publishers And obviously they are a for-profit company, and so there has to be a monetary equation in that mix. So I'll continue to editorialize as we go forward, but just to tell the UCF story, we've been a Barnes & Noble's Inclusive Access client since 2018, but I want to note that we are an opt-in. The state of Florida had some legislation that was passed at that point in time, and it gave the opportunity for institutions to start going down that path. However, 2 years later in 2020, they gave institutions the option to go into an opt-out model. UCF has stayed as an opt-in model primarily because of the student voice. We had students rally against, well, not necessarily against administration, rallied to inform administration that they really felt strongly about having the autonomy to pick and choose what they purchase and when. So I'm sure that you've all heard narratives that if you do an opt-in, you're going to see lower adoption rates and the bookstore can't guarantee certain rates. But I'll present our 23-24 data is that we had a greater than 64% opt-in rate. Having talked with a number of my colleagues across the country with opt-out, that 64 outpaces some of the opt-out rates that we've seen as far as consumption. And while we can say in that same academic year that we save over $4 million through that program, which is doing some mental and some fiscal gymnastics to actually show that number of what is that true savings. At the same time, we saved over $4 million with our open education efforts. If you could go to the next slide. Within UCF, we've had an emerging OER effort since 2018 that corresponds with the inclusive access piece. What we have is an open structure that has really evolved over that time, but more so over the last 2 to 3 years. We do have an affordability cap of $20 per credit, and we do also have zero textbook cost markers, and that is something that is embraced and supported by the state of Florida. We do have our own affordable instructional materials effort across campus that does recognize innovative uses and faculty who are saving students money. But our change here, really within the last year or so, is going to an open first approach. It's not saying don't ever use publisher material just because there isn't open material for every subject and every discipline, but explore open first, and then you will see I threw in there or AI, potentially as creating that free to use material. Partner with your library, see what they have in the reserves, and then at last cost, if there has to be a cost burden to the students, look at publisher options and see if there's an opportunity to get a discounted rate. And explore non-IA or EA models that could be bulk purchasing of required course materials like McGraw-Hill's ALEX. But what has really helped spur open within our university in the last couple of years is the structure that's being built around here. We have a faculty senate committee that is focused on affordable course materials. We are launching this semester a university-wide council that's a coordinating council that will have representation from faculty from every single college, plus key folks in key stakeholder roles. And then we have some core support structures across the university around digital learning, the library, our Center for Teaching and Learning. So I would gather that if we're doing this presentation a year from now and I'm presenting academic year 24-25 or even beyond, that we'll see that the OER savings has outpaced our inclusive access. But let me pass it on to Anne Marie, and love to hear what is happening in Northern Iowa.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, I'm Anne Marie Gruber from University of Northern Iowa. We are a regional comprehensive university. We have about 9,000 students, primarily on campus, but with growing online programs. We have strong programs, particularly in education, in various areas in the business area, and in the sciences, especially the health sciences. And I think those disciplines really come into play when we're talking about course materials in some ways. We have, as a university, contracted with Follett as our bookstore vendor for about the past 2 years, November 2023. They took over. Prior to that, we had a university-owned bookstore for 5 years, and prior to that, it was owned privately. And so we've seen different iterations. Currently on my campus, we have course by course inclusive access in certain courses when faculty opt in. And we also, at the same time, have a robust OER and open education program. We use the language textbook equity to name that program because it includes, like Cheryl mentioned, things like unlimited user ebooks that the library provides. It is a pretty robust program, but it's at the same time pretty grassroots, I would say. There's no budget, and it's really reliant on individual instructors to transition courses from commercial materials to free and affordable materials. I would say that with our bookstore staff, both the current store manager and the regional manager, we really have some mutual stated goals, which include things like, of course, affordability and transparency. I have worked through some challenges with some of those things in terms of sort of unexplained increases in course materials costs that are commercial materials. Sometimes instructors don't always look at the bookstore listing and then they realize all of a sudden that there was a big increase for no clear reason. And so I help with, I'm not the bookstore's complaint department, but I do help with sort of navigating some of those challenges. I'm often contacted by faculty to try to troubleshoot some of those things. With our inclusive access titles, we've made sure that there is a lot of transparency with the bookstore. For instance, early on with our experience with Follett, they were not listing any prices on the bookstore website for inclusive access titles, the automatically billed titles. And I'm not a lawyer, but in my reading of the Higher Education Opportunity Act, that was not in compliance. And so I worked with bookstore staff and our provost office to ensure that there'd be some more transparency, and those prices were added. It's in a note, it's not big language, but big font or anything, but it's there. And so just increasing that transparency for students is part of what I've helped them do. I would say we have collegial relationships, and that's really key. So I try to not bother the bookstore staff too often, but at least once or twice a year we get together and I treat them to coffee and we chit chat about how things are going with course materials in the bookstore and with the textbook equity program. Those collegial relationships have been really important, and they've developed kind of an increasing understanding of all these different types of course materials. Especially those areas where the library can provide support for instructors. If they have instructors who say to them, for instance, gosh, this item has increased in price, or my students can't afford it, they know that they can refer instructors to me for help identifying potential free and affordable materials that might match their course. At the same time as those collegial relationships really being important, because Follett is a corporation that is beholden to stakeholders, we can't necessarily solve the corporate policy issues or limitations. Even things like data collection. I don't know what library licensed ebooks are used in courses on my campus because Follett doesn't collect that data. And so there are some gaps with that. Similarly with OER. Best case scenario would be all those things are listed and linked on the bookstore website when students look up their courses. Currently, it's sort of a mixed bag as to whether that information is provided to students by the bookstore. So I think that's really because of system limitations that our Follett's bookstore textbook adoption system really is not designed to collect information about things like OER, library licensed ebooks. And so there are some gaps in information sharing there. I was a little jealous when Cheryl was talking about getting daily data. I ask twice a year, and I'm lucky if I get, a list of the course sections using that professors reported using free materials. I don't get any longer a list of the actual materials. So I can't put things in different buckets, like which are library ebooks, which are OER. I need that information for state level reporting, but this is the first year that I really haven't been able to do that because kind of our cycles with when Follett started, and now we're fully on board with using their adoption system. And so I'm seeing some of those data challenges. We've also had significant amounts of staff turnover in terms of the bookstore manager. In the 2-year contract, we've had, I think, 4 or 5 different bookstore managers. And so that relationship is important, but it keeps the person in that role keeps changing. So I hope that we'll have some more stability soon. I really focus on the things that I think as the textbook equity librarian, I can influence. That includes things like helping the bookstore staff understand more about what the free flavors of course materials are, or free to student at least. They're not that familiar usually, coming from typically retail backgrounds. They're not necessarily familiar with library licensed ebooks and how they work, or whether there are limitations to that, or even the actual definition of OER. I found that I need to share. And so sharing that information and making sure that we're in communication is important. And information sharing about our initiative more broadly has been important. And so making sure that we're, I'm even helping our academic administrators and business administrators on the campus side learn more about these different things, because they make some assumptions and they may not be aware of both benefits and drawbacks to things like automatic billing. I've really found it important to count the wins. For instance, our bookstore had part of their contract to fund textbook scholarships every year, and that wasn't implemented for the first couple of years. And so I worked with our student government to make sure that that was implemented, and it is now. Unfortunately, it can't pay for inclusive access titles because it's in the form of a gift card to the bookstore, which you can't use to pay off your university bill. So there's some gaps there that I'm hoping to address with our Dean of Students. It looks like we're about ready to dive into our group discussion time, so I'm looking forward to that. I would say on my campus, the IA and OER do coexist. We have avoided equitable access or a flat fee model so far, and I hope that is able to continue. But we're really proud that we've saved our students $2.9 million since we started tracking in 2016 with our textbook equity program. And that was about $900,000 last calendar year. So we're excited about that progress. And it's really pretty grassroots with individual instructors. So thanks so much. And I'm eager for our group conversations.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for sharing your experience with everybody. And we are going to stop recording this session now.